In this tutorial I'm going to add the pedals. This was always part of the plan. I wanted to put in pedal textures anyway, the way I would have had in a redline model years ago. This is deeply flawed as a way of modeling them, of course, because you can see they're distorted if the footwell is not perfectly square, which this one is not. And they just look kind of cheesy. But they look better than nothing at a distance. So I'm using the rectangle select and the bucket tool to create these rectangles, which are supposed to be the armatures. And then I add photographs of actual pedals. So there's a photograph from a parts description. And I use the free select or lasso tool to select the one I want. Actually, this exact same tool is available in Photoshop, so it will be fairly familiar to anybody who's used an image editor. Because GIMP and Photoshop are not the only games in town, but they're certainly the two main photo editors out there. So moving around the edge here. Making sure everything's selected correctly. Copy. And then paste it into a layer specifically for the pedals that I've created in GIMP. I often forget to mention my layers. Then I rotate it. And then it's way too big, so I have to scale it down. So here I arbitrarily decide to knock it down to half size to see what happens, because I don't have drawings. And it more or less works that way. So I move it into position. And next comes the brake pedal, which is similar to what you would have in a manual shift car. This is, in theory, an automatic Vega, but the pedals would be the same because most of the early Vegas didn't have disc brakes or power brakes. Very, very primitive cars. So that meant they had a standard brake pedal and not one advertising GM's disc brakes. Because if you've seen a 70s GM car with automatic transmission, they usually have that wide disc brakes brake pedal, but not the Vega. So here I have a photo of a brake pedal, which could also be a clutch pedal. And I copy it, I paste it, and then rotate. Incidentally, I did the rotation wrong, so I'm going to have to fix that. Because if you notice, a brake or clutch pedal will taper to the point where it's smaller on the bottom than the top, and I've done the opposite here. Just misremembering. But for the meantime, I move it into place, and it has to be scaled down more before I can do that. So scale again. Again, this is guesswork because I don't have drawings. It looks more or less okay, except for the taper. Strangely, I didn't notice that at this point. I only noticed it after I imported it into the actual model. So anyway, I'm checking it out. Actually, another thing you can tell here is that the pedals are a little bit too far apart. That's another issue. Now, of course, I also have to kill the opacity if I want to export it, so that's what I was doing during the wait. So export to Targa. And this will not be an acceptable texture, but I didn't realize that when I made this. But this is a warning as to the pitfalls of this, of doing petals, that you don't want to do them upside down. So here I've imported, or I'm trying to import. Here I'm importing the textures into the UV editor, followed by the materials editor. And there it is, they're in, except this is where I notice, hey, wait a minute, that petal's the wrong shape. So I jump back to GIMP. I move the petals closer together, which was another obvious problem. If you remember when you drive an old GM car, you tend to use your right foot and roll on the heel so you can go between the pedals easily. But anyway, so then I just cut out the incorrectly rotated, or rather I decided to rotate in place. I mean, it would have been two options. I could have rotated like this, or I could have cut it out and pasted it back in. In this case, I rotated it and then moved it. But you have both options. So I go back and kill the opacity again, 100 for all the transparent layers of the XCF file. And there we have a texture file export to Targa. Replace the existing one, and RLA compression is fine because it's compatible with Blender. Quit, we go to Blender, take a look at the result. So just to be sure, we, as a matter of habit, we import again. Actually, I've mentioned before, this is not entirely necessary if you have restarted Blender, because it will automatically reload the new texture if it's the same file name. But I have habits which are based on experience of leaving Blender open and so on. So there are the petals. They fit. And that's it. Thanks for watching.